Hello, dear students. Welcome to the subject known as Introduction to Journalism and Mass Communication. The code number is OJO/OMC 121. My name is Libertarian from the Open University of Tanzania, and I'm happy to take you through the theories of mass communication. And today we're going to discuss in this knowledge area 5, the normative ethics of the media. And remember that this is the Department of Journalism and Media Studies at the Open University of Tanzania. Now, before we start, it's important that we look at the lecture objectives. We expect at the end of this subject, students should be able to understand what theory means and understand the different types of normative theories. Now, as part of introduction, this unit actually exposes students to various mass communication theories, especially those to do with the normative theories, as I said before. Therefore, students should be able to identify a theory that goes along with the specific research topics or other research studies in order to develop a theoretical framework for such. As you all understand that when you develop a theory, or if you are in a research topic, for example, at the end of it, you must have a theory to describe your topic or your research. Now, what is a theory? We're saying a theory is a conceptual representation of explanation of a phenomenon. These are kind of stories about how and why certain events do happen. So you're saying if you want to study a certain, environment, you must develop a kind of a theory. It's a kind of a representation, a conceptual representation or explanation. You want to explain a certain phenomenon, in a way that people understand it. So in other words, these are stories about how that phenomenon has occurred and why that phenomenon do exist. Now, according to one of the scholars, that is Kurt Lewin, he defines theory as a way of explaining the ordering and occurrence of various events. So you can see that this definition does not differ with what we have just defined, that a theory is a way of explaining an ordering and occurrence of various events. How do they occur and why are they there? Now, it can also be defined as a set of systematic generalizations based on scientific observation. It's something to do with scientific observation. And it's a set of systematic generalization. How do you come up with a generalization of a certain phenomenon based on scientific observation and leading to further empirical observation? That is according to Severin and Tankard Jr. of 1982. Now, after having defined that, now it is important we look at normative ethics. Normative ethics, we are saying normative ethical theory deals with standards of rightness and wrongness of issues. These are more or less rules and principles of ethical moral behavior, and the various media industry codes of ethics or standards of good practice are examples of normative ethics. So normally when you talk of normative theory or normative ethical theories, these are kind of norms. So we're trying to set the standards of rightness and wrongness. So if you're a media practitioner, you must understand it as a journalist, what is right and what is wrong. And if it's wrong, how are you going to avoid it? And if something is right, how are you going to improve that rightness? So therefore, when we talk of norms or normative ethics, we are talking of rules. These are the principles of ethical moral behavior set by the media industry. That's why we have so many media outlets today abiding to these moral standards, rules, and principles. So normative ethics is a part of moral philosophy or ethics, concerned with the criteria of what is morally right or wrong. So the underlying principle remains the same, that we are talking of morally rightness or what is morally wrong. So it includes the formulation of moral rules that have direct implications for what human actions, institutions, and ways of life should be like. So you have an institution, we must have moral standards which have direct implications for what human actions. So an institution must abide to these moral rules and standards and the way of life in general. So we are saying that they serve a real world of frameworks within which people can begin now to weigh competing alternatives of behavior. For example, we are saying fairness is a meta-ethic. It's a fundamental, ethical right. But we are saying journalists' code of practice, for example, define what is meant by fairness in the word of reporting now. When it comes to the word of reporting as a journalist, what is fairness? Yes, we understand that fairness is a fundamental, right, fine, you must be fair. But when it comes to journalism, what does fairness mean? And how far does a journalist, or how far should a journalist go to ensure that fairness is being held? And how fairness should be applied in the context of journalism? Dear students, now in a nutshell, we're saying this is a type of theory that describes an ideal way for media system to be structured and operated. An ideal way for the media to be operated. There must be structures. A media should be well structured in a way that they abide to the moral principles and rules. So when we talk of normative ethics, what do they include in general for the media practitioners? So let us now start to look into these. And to start with, it's important that we look at the authoritarian media theory as part of normative ethics. We're saying authoritarian media theory. This is one of the oldest of the press theories we all understand, and it's an idea that placed all forms of communication under the control of governing elite authorities. So when we talk of authoritarian media theory, just as the name suggests itself, it means there must be an authority up there, governing elite, and authorities justified their control as a means to protect and preserve their ordained social order. So which means now there must be a top authority or the government elite which controls the media operations, and they want to preserve their order, they want to preserve their dignity, etc., etc. That's why we have authoritarian media theory. And it actually began in 16th century in Europe, a period when feudal aristocracies exercised arbitrary power over the lives of most people. You remember those who studied history, the so-called proletariats, or the working class. The bourgeoisies were there up, and then we had the proletariats, the working class. So that's why we're saying the authoritarian media theory, this began in 16th century in Europe, where those few feudal lords or aristocracies exercised power over the lives of most proletariats who were the working class. It derived from states' philosophy of absolutism, in which now recognition of the truth was entrusted to only a small number of sages, or rather elites, who were able to exercise leadership. And in this case now, it was a top-down approach. Only those who were entrusted, and few ones, were the ones to give orders, to those who were subordinates. And the kind of structure was a top-down kind of approach, authoritarian. You have to abide with whatever that comes from the top. And it advocates the complete domination of media by government for the purpose of forcing the media to serve the government. And the media were forbidden now to criticize the government and its functionaries. So which means now if you own the media outlet, you were not supposed to criticize the government in any way, or rather you are going to be forbidden. So which means now you have to receive whichever or whatever that comes from above. That is authoritarian, regime. So the media were not free to operate, in other words. Now the media in authoritarian system are not allowed to print or rather broadcast anything which could undermine the established authority, and any offense to existing political value is avoided. So which means now in authoritarian system, if you have a print media or broadcast media, you don't have to print or to broadcast something that you think could undermine the authority at hand. That was not allowed. Or rather, you would have perished. Now, we are saying the authoritarian government may go to the extent of punishing anyone who could question the state's ideology. For example, if you have the state which has its own ideology, you are not supposed to question that ideology, no matter how good or bad the ideology is. You are supposed to remain silent and abide and follow that ideology. Now, unfortunately, if it happens that the ideology is punitive, you have to follow it without any question. If the ideology is rather, dictatorial, you would have to follow it without any question. So that was the bad part of it. So the fundamental assumption of the authoritarian system is that the government is infallible, which means the government is perfect in whatever that they're doing. No matter how bad the government could do, or no matter how bad those people in authority, could do, but you were supposed to agree and abide to whatever that they put across. So media professionals are therefore not allowed to have any independence with the media organizations. Also foreign media, for example, if there is a presence of foreign media there, or rather subordinate to the established authority, in that all imported media products are controlled by the state. So if a foreign media importing media content, the media content were to be censored by those in authority, so that you don't offend the authority in any way. Now, authoritarian media still operate today in countries where the press is largely owned or controlled by the government. In most cases, repressive governments. So it's not surprising to see that today in Africa, for example, we have this kind of authoritarian media, or authoritarian systems where the government, several governments in Africa, I don't want to mention them, but I'm sure that you understand some of the authoritarian regimes in Africa where they don't exercise the freedom of speech, and journalists are being killed, etc., etc. That is authoritarian system. Repressive regimes, which is not the case in the media operations and is not encouraged. So the instruments of authoritarian control could be repressive legislations and decrees, heavy taxation, for example, censorships, etc., etc. Most of the African countries would have the so-called draconian laws, which are not friendly in the media operations. And journalists will be there complaining about these draconian laws, and they want to be, smashed out of the system, etc., etc. But now you would find those in authority don't want to do away with those draconian laws. Or we have decrees, we have heavy taxations. Before you want to establish a media station, you are subjected to heavy tax so that it deprives you to establish a media station. That's not encouraged in the free press. Censorships. All these are the instruments of authoritarian control. Now, the relationship between the state and the media in authoritarian system can be illustrated in the following diagram, where you find the government is just on top and the media is just there at the bottom, whereby the media have to receive whatever that comes from the above or from the top authority. That is the government and the media. And the line is rather vertical, whereby you have to receive, everything from the top, and that's the top-down approach. Now, after having seen the authoritarian regime, now it's important that we look at the libertarian theory, or rather free press theory. Now, with the libertarian thoughts, this emerged out of the authoritarian theory, when some social movements, including Protestant Reformation, demanded greater freedom for the individuals over their lives and thoughts. So after the authoritarian regime and theory, then the libertarian theory came in and said, okay, I think we have to regulate the media operations, rather that there should be some kind of a freedom and freedom of expression. People should be free to express their own feelings and opinions. So it prescribes that an individual should be free to publish what he or she likes and to hold and express opinions freely. It's very unfortunate that in most of the African countries, we don't have this opportunity where journalists, individuals will be free to express their ideas, rather they'll be free to express their opinions, etc., etc. We find a lot of critical guys who would end up in jails, and some will even be killed, or rather perish, for example. So, libertarian theory says an individual, or it proposes that there should be freedom. People should be free to express themselves in whatever that they think could, hold those in power responsible. So it sees the press as a free market, or as a free marketplace of ideas. That all ideas should be put before the public, and the public will choose the best now from the marketplace of ideas. So that was proposed by Milton, whereby we are saying free marketplace of ideas. People should be free to express themselves in a platform whereby all these ideas now will be taken on board and an action should be done. That's a free marketplace of ideas. So libertarian theory does not advocate media immunity at all to the rule of law, but it says that people should be seen as rational beings. People should be taken with an integrity, able to distinguish what is good and what is bad, because they understand what is truth and false. And this renders prior censorship of media unnecessary. So let us now take these people in the libertarian theory as people with the conscious mind. They understand what they're doing. So we are not saying that in this theory, or libertarian theory, we are not advocating that media should be immune to the rule of law. No, rule of law should be there. There should be rules. There should be, some kind of guidelines to operate the media, to guide the media operation. That's very fine. But now, but people should be free to express themselves. But if they go astray, then the rule of law should take its course. So rule of the law should be there, but at least you should let the people talk or express their feelings and opinions. So as a matter of fact, dear students, we're saying in the libertarian system, attacks on the government's policies are fully accepted and even encouraged. So if you find the government policies are not in line with the development, or the government policies are rather punitive, the government policies are not friendly to the welfare, the general welfare of the people, then in the libertarian system, people are allowed to criticize the policies and question those who put them in place. So moreover, there should be no restrictions on the import or export of media message across the national frontiers. Let people import the media content, let them export the media content, let them share whatever experience that they have, and there will be no restrictions imposed whatsoever, unlike with the authoritarian theory. So moreover, journalists and media professionals now ought to have full autonomy within the media organizations. They have that sense of ownership. And it also advocates that the press has been seen as a partner in progress with the government in the search for truth, rather than a tool in the hands of the government. After having seen the libertarian theory, it's important that we look at the social responsibility theory as part of the normative ethics. And we are saying the social responsibility theory emphasizes the freedom of press and places now the responsibility on the media practitioners to abide by the certain social standards or social orders. And it believes that the press is automatically controlled by the community opinion, consumer protest, and professional ethics. So under the social responsibility, the media professionals or the media practitioners should abide by the standards of the society. And remember that the social responsibility, the media should be socially responsible to the audience within which they are functioning to. They should work and abide by the desires of the audience. And that's why we're saying it emphasizes the freedom of the press and places their responsibility on the media practitioners to abide by certain social standards. What are the certain social standards? And we are saying that we have the community and the media should work for the community. They should be socially responsible to the community within whom they are serving. And it calls on the media to be the voice of all the people, the voice of the voiceless, not just elite groups, or rather groups that have or had dominated national or regional or local culture in the past. No, we are saying media should be socially responsible to all the groups, regardless of whether they're rich, regardless of their race, nationality, regionality, local culture, etc., etc. There'll be no segregation of whatsoever. That is social responsibility theory. And it also points out that the media, in carrying out their obligations, must adhere to the highest ethical standards. That's where the norms comes in, the rules and the principles and the social responsible. That you should be social responsible. What's social responsible in this context? That you should not lie. You should be objective to the media that you're serving. It calls for the pluralism in the place of monopolization. Why should you monopolize? People should be free to express themselves. Pluralism. If we have media, let us have the platform where we shall have a lot of media outlets to express themselves, but in a socially responsible manner. We're advocating for the decentralization and localization in the place of centralism. Why should we have a centralism? No, we should decentralize the media, for example, industry. We should decentralize the freedom of expression, etc., etc. And also that the media conglomerates be replaced or mixed with small-scale media enterprises, which means now we are trying to advocate that even our ordinary citizens should own their own media outlets. And it also calls for the horizontal in place of top-down communication to ensure feedback and complete communication circuit. So we were saying that there should not be a vertical where we have a top-down kind of communication, but I think we should have a horizontal where we get the feedback and we have that complete communication process. Now, to conclude, we're saying, dear students, it's now my hope that you have been able to follow and understand the normative media theories of the press, and you're able now to explain with examples reflecting your own localities. Now, I want you to engage in a class activity whereby I'm asking you to explain what it means by authoritarian media theory, and with examples describe now how it differs with the libertarian theory of the press. Ladies and gentlemen, dear students, after having said that, I hope that you have enjoyed the subject, and that was Knowledge Area 5, and we shall meet in the Knowledge Area 6, where we shall continue with other forms of mass communication theories. And on that note, I say thank you very much and thank you for your attention.